Hi, welcome. So today we'll be reading from Sui Sin Far's Mrs. Spring Fragrance. Let's get started. I hope you're comfortable. 1. When Mrs. Spring Fragrance first arrived in Seattle, she was unacquainted with even one word of the American language. 5 years later, her husband, speaking of her, said, "There are no more American words for her learning." And everyone who knew Mrs. Spring Fragrance agreed with Mr. Spring Fragrance. Mr. Spring Fragrance was a young curio merchant. Though conservatively Chinese in many respects, he was at the same time what is called by the Westerners Americanized. Mrs. Spring Fragrance was even more Americanized. Next door to the Spring Fragrances lived the Chinyens. Mrs. Chinyen was much older than Mrs. Spring Fragrance, but she had a daughter of 18 with whom Mrs. Spring Fragrance was on terms of great friendship. The daughter was a pretty girl whose Chinese name was Mai Guifar, a rose, and whose American name was Laura. Nearly everybody called her Laura, even her parents and Chinese friends. Laura had a sweetheart, a youth named Kaitsu. Kaitsu, who was American-born and as ruddy and stalwart as any young Westerner, was noted among baseball players as one of the finest pitchers on the coast. He could also sing "Drink to Me Only with Thine Eyes" to Laura's piano accompaniment. Now the only person who knew that Kaitsu loved Laura and that Laura loved Kaitsu was Mrs. Spring Fragrance. The reason for this was that, although the Chinyan parents lived in a house furnished in American style and wore American clothes, yet they religiously observed many Chinese customs, and their ideals of life were the ideals of their Chinese forefathers. Therefore, they had betrothed their daughter, Laura, at the age of 15, to the eldest son of the Chinese government school teacher in San Francisco. The time for the consummation of the betrothal was approaching. Laura was with Mrs. Spring Fragrance, and Mrs. Spring Fragrance was trying to cheer her. "I had such a pretty walk today," she said. "I crossed the banks above the beach and came back by the long road. In the green grass the daffodils were blowing. In the cottage gardens the currant bushes were flowering, and in the air was the perfume of the wallflower. I wished, Laura, that you were with me." Laura burst into tears. "That is the walk," she sobbed. "Kaitsu and I are so in love, but never, never can we take it together again." "Now, little sister," comforted Mrs. Spring Fragrance, "you really must not grieve like that. Is there not a beautiful American poem written by a noble American named Tennyson, which says, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all"?" Mrs. Spring Fragrance was unaware that Mr. Spring Fragrance, having returned from the city, tired with the day's business, had thrown himself down on the bamboo settee on the veranda, and that although his eyes were engaged in scanning the pages of the Chinese world, his ears could not help receiving the words which were borne to him through the open window. "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all," repeated Mr. Spring Fragrance. Not wishing to hear more of the secret talk of women, he rose and sauntered around the veranda to the other side of the house. 2 pigeons circled around his head. He felt in his pocket for a lychee, which he usually carried for their pecking. His fingers touched a little box. It contained a jadestone pendant, which Mrs. Spring Fragrance had particularly admired the last time she was downtown. It was the 5th anniversary of Mr. and Mrs. Spring Fragrance's wedding day. Mr. Spring Fragrance pressed the little box down into the depths of his pocket. A young man came out of the back door of the house at Mr. Spring Fragrance's left. The Chinyan house was at his right. "Good evening," said the young man. "Good evening," returned Mr. Spring Fragrance. He stepped down from his porch and went and leaned over the railing which separated this yard from the yard in which stood the young man. "Will you please tell me," said Mr. Spring Fragrance, "the meaning of 2 lines of an American verse which I have learned?" "Certainly," returned the young man with a genial smile. He was a star student at the University of Washington, and had not the slightest doubt that he could explain the meaning of all things in the universe. "Well," said Mr. Spring Fragrance, "it is this: 'tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." "Ah," responded the young man, with an air of profound wisdom. "That, Mr. Spring Fragrance, means that it is a good thing to love anyway, even if we can't get what we love, or, as the poet tells us, lose what we love. Of course, one needs experience to feel the truth of this teaching." The young man smiled pensively and reminiscently. More than a dozen young maidens, loved and lost, were passing before his mind's eye. "The truth of the teaching," echoed Mr. Spring Fragrance, a little testily. "There is no truth in it whatever. There is no truth in it whatsoever. It is disobedient to reason. Is it not better to have what you do not love than to love what you do not have?" "That depends," answered the young man, "upon temperament." "I thank you. Good night," said Mr. Spring Fragrance. He turned away to muse upon the unwisdom of the American way of looking at things. Meanwhile, inside the house, Laura was refusing to be comforted. "No, no," she cried. "If I had not gone to school with Kaitsu, nor talked nor walked with him, nor played the accompaniments to his song, then I might consider with complacency, or at least without horror, my approaching marriage with the son of Manu. But as it is, oh, as it is!" The girl rocked herself to and fro in heartfelt grief. Mrs. Spring Fragrance knelt down beside her, and clasping her arms around her neck, cried in sympathy, "Little sister, oh, little sister, dry your tears. Do not despair. A moon has yet to pass before the marriage can take place. Who knows what the stars may have to say to one another during its passing? A little bird has whispered to me." For a long time, Mrs. Spring Fragrance talked. For a long time, Laura listened. When the girl arose to go, there was a bright light in her eyes. 2. Mrs. Spring Fragrance, in San Francisco on a visit to her cousin, the wife of the herb doctor of Clay Street, was having a good time. She was invited everywhere that the wife of an honorable Chinese merchant could go. There was much to see and hear, including more than a dozen babies who had been born in the families of her friends since she last visited the city of the Golden Gate. Mrs. Spring Fragrance loved babies. She had had 2 herself, but both had been transplanted into the spirit land before the completion of even 1 moon. There were also many dinners and theater parties given in her honor. It was at one of the theater parties that Mrs. Spring Fragrance met Aoi, a young girl who had the reputation of being the prettiest Chinese girl in San Francisco and the naughtiest. In spite of gossip, however, Mrs. Spring Fragrance took a great fancy to Aoi and invited her to a tete-a-tete picnic on the following day. This invitation Aoi joyfully accepted. She was a sort of bird girl and never felt so happy as when out in the park or woods. On the day after the picnic, Mrs. Spring Fragrance wrote to Laura thus: "My precious Laura, may the bamboo ever wave. Next week, I accompany Aoi to the beauteous town of San Jose. There we will be met by the son of the illustrious teacher, and in a little mission presided over by a benevolent American priest, the little Aoi and the son of the illustrious teacher will be joined together in love and harmony, two pieces of music made to complete one another. The son of the illustrious teacher, having been through an American Hall of Learning, is well able to provide for his orphan bride, and fears not the displeasure of his parents, now that he is assured that your grief at his loss will not be inconsolable. He wishes me to waft to you and to Kaisu that the little Aoi joins with him 10,000 rainbow wishes for your happiness. My respects to your honorable parents, and to yourself, the heart of your loving friend, Jade Spring Fragrance." To Mr. Spring Fragrance, Mrs. Spring Fragrance also indited a letter. "Great and honored man, greetings from your plum blossom, who is desirous of hiding herself from the sun of your presence for a week of 7 days more. My honorable cousin is preparing for the 5th Moon Festival, and wishes me to compound for the occasion some American fudge, for which delectable sweet, made by my clumsy hands, you have sometimes shown a slight prejudice. I am enjoying a most agreeable visit, and American friends, as also our own, strive benevolently for the accomplishment of my pleasure. Mrs. Samuel Smith, an American lady, known to my cousin, asked for my accompaniment to a magniloquent lecture the other evening. My goodness. The subject was America, the Protector of China. It was most exhilarating, and the effect of so much expression of benevolence leads me to beg of you to forget to remember that the barber charges you $1 for a shave, while he humbly submits to the American man a bill of 15 cents. And murmur no more because your honored elder brother, on a visit to this country, is detained under the roof tree of this great government instead of under your own humble roof. Console with him the reflection that he is protected under the wing of the eagle, the emblem of liberty. What is the loss of 1,000 years, or 10,000 times $10, compared with the happiness of knowing oneself so securely sheltered? All of this I have learned from Mrs. Samuel Smith, who is as brilliant and great a mind as one of your own superior sex. For me, it is sufficient to know that the Golden Gate Park is most enchanting, and the seals on the rock of the Cliff House extremely entertaining and amiable. There is much feasting and merrymaking under the lanterns in honor of your stupid thorn. I have also purchased for your smoking a pipe with an amber mouth. It is said to be very sweet to the lips, and to emit a cloud of smoke fit for the gods to inhale. Awaiting, by the wonderful wire of the telegram message, your gracious permission to remain for the celebration of the 5th Moon Festival and the making of American fudge. I continue for 10,000 times 10,000 years. Your ever-loving and obedient woman, Jade. P.S. Forget not to care for the cat, the birds, and the flowers. Do not eat too quickly, nor fan too vigorously now that the weather is warming. 3. Mrs. Spring Fragrance sat on his doorstep. Oh, did I say Mr. or Mrs.? Let me start again. Mr. Spring Fragrance sat on his doorstep. He had been reading 2 letters, one from Mrs. Spring Fragrance, and the other from an elderly bachelor cousin in San Francisco. The one from the elderly bachelor cousin was a business letter, but contained the following postscript. Sing Hing, the son of the government schoolmaster, seems to be much in the company of your young wife. He is a good-looking youth, and, pardon me, my dear cousin, but if women are allowed to stray at will from under their husbands' mulberry roofs, what is to prevent them from becoming butterflies? Sing Foon is old and cynical, said Mr. Spring Fragrance to himself. Why should I pay attention to him? This is America, where a man may speak to a woman and a woman listen without any thought of evil. He destroyed his cousin's letter and reread his wife's. Then he became very thoughtful. Was the making of American fudge sufficient reason for a wife to wish to remain a week longer in a city where her husband was not? The young man who lived in the next house came out to water the lawn. Good evening, he said. Any news from Mrs. Spring Fragrance? She is having a good time, said he. Glad to hear it. I think you told me she was to return at the end of this week. I've changed my mind about her, said Mr. Spring Fragrance. I'm bidding her remain a week longer, as I wish to give a smoking party during her absence. I hope I may have the pleasure of your company. I shall be delighted, returned the young fellow. But, Mr. Spring Fragrance, don't invite any other white fellows. If you do not, I shall be able to get in a scoop. You know, I am a sort of honorary reporter for the Gleaner. Very well, absently answered Mr. Spring Fragrance. Of course, your friend the consul will be present. I shall call it a high-class Chinese stag party. In spite of his melancholy mood, Mr. Spring Fragrance smiled. Everything is high class in America, he observed. Sure, cheerfully assented the young man. Haven't you ever heard that all Americans are princes and princesses? And just as soon as a foreigner puts his foot upon our shores, he also becomes of the nobility? I mean, the royal family? What about my brother in the detention pen? Dryly inquired Mr. Spring Fragrance. Now you've got me, said the young man, rubbing his head. Well, that is a shame. A beastly shame, as the Englishman says. But understand, old fellow, that we real Americans are up against that, even more than you. It is against our principles. I offer the real American my consolations that they should be compelled to do that which is against their principles. Oh, well, it will all come right some day. We're not a bad sort, you know. Think of the indemnity money returned to the Dragon by Uncle Sam. Mr. Spring Fragrance puffed his pipe in silence for some moments. More than politics was troubling his mind. At last he spoke. Love, he said, slowly and distinctly, comes before the wedding in this country, does it not? Yes, certainly. Young Carmen knew Mr. Spring Fragrance well enough to receive with calmness his most astounding queries. "Presuming," continued Mr. Spring Fragrance, "presuming that some friend of your father's, living, presuming, in England, has a daughter that he arranges with your father to be your wife. Presuming that you have never seen that daughter, but that you marry her, knowing her not. Presuming that she marries you, knowing you not. After she marries you and knows you, will that woman love you?" "Emphatically no," answered the young man. "That is the way it would be in America, that the woman who marries the man like that would not love him?" "Yes, that is the way it would be in America. Love in this country must be free, or it is not love at all." "In China, it is different," mused Mr. Spring Fragrance. "Oh, yes, I have no doubt that in China it is different. But the love is in the heart all the same," went on Mr. Spring Fragrance. "Yes, all the same. Everybody falls in love some time or another. Some pensively, many times." Mr. Spring Fragrance arose. "I must go downtown," said he. As he walked down the street, he recalled the remark of a business acquaintance who had met his wife and had had some conversation with her. "She is just like an American woman." He had felt somewhat flattered when this remark had been made. He looked upon it as a compliment to his wife's cleverness, but it rankled in his mind as he entered the telegraph office. If his wife was becoming an American woman, would it not be possible for her to love as an American woman a man to whom she was not married? There also floated in his memory the verse which his wife had quoted to the daughter of Jinyan. When the telegraph clerk handed him a blank, he wrote this message: "Remain as you wish, but remember that 'tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." When Mrs. Spring Fragrance received this message, her laughter tinkled like falling water. How droll! How delightful! How was her husband quoting American poetry in a telegram? Perhaps he had been reading her American poetry books since she had left him. She hoped so. They would lead him to understand her sympathy for her dear Laura and Kaizu. She need to no longer keep from him their secret. How joyful! It had been such a hardship to refrain from confiding in him before, but discreetness had been most necessary, seeing that Mr. Spring Fragrance entertained as old-fashioned notions concerning marriage as did the Chinyan parents. Strange that that should be so, since he had fallen in love with her picture before he ever had seen her, just as she had fallen in love with his. And when the marriage veil was lifted, and each beheld the other for the first time in flesh, there had been no delusion, no lessening of the respect and affection which those who had brought about the marriage and had inspired in each young heart. Mrs. Spring Fragrance began to wish she could fall asleep and wake to find the week flown, and she in her own little home pouring tea for Mr. Spring Fragrance.